This is a Balanced Brain podcast with your hosts, Melanie Nicholson and Sean Clift.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Balanced Brain podcast. My name's Sean Clift, and I'm joined, as always, by my good friend and co-host, Melanie Nicholson. Melanie, how are you? Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too, Sean. I'm fantastic.
That's great. Look, I hope 2022 is really great for you, but let's get into it. We've got a really cracker of an episode to start off. We've got an international Speedway Superstar, our first international sports guest, Adam Shields. Adam, welcome to the Balanced Brain podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you here. Tell us, what's it like being a British Speedway rider?
Well, it was a lifelong kind of dream of mine. I grew up it was my family sport, so I never had that much to do with team sports or anything like that when I was a young kid. Grew up in the Hunter Valley, and everybody was into cricket and rugby. And my family we have a property with our own track that's on the property, and that was my hobby. And my dad was a good Australian standard rider. My uncle was a rider who did a little bit of international racing, and so I just fell in love with it from a very, very young age, and made it my sort of life goal to be kind of the best there was at it. But I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but I thought that one day I would be able to achieve that.
Wow. And so what was your journey from Australia to the UK?
Well, going from thinking you're going to be the best rider ever to actually the reality of it is quite tough. But I'm sure that every sport person can relate to just how tough the journey is. And once you go through the process of going through the ranks, you sort of get knocked down a few pegs, and then you sort of not quite as far along as you wanted to be by that stage of the career, and then you take little breaks and in and out. But I was about 23 by the time I got over there and started racing in the sort of the professional leagues. And then it was my my sort of job, so to speak, and my profession for another 14 years after that.
Wow.
Okay. And in that time, I'd read a bit about you, Adam, and I know you, and you had quite a lot of accidents and injuries, and there was a really serious one in Peterborough. So if you want to tell us about that.
Yeah, I was just starting to go quite well then on the sort of the international stage as well. I've been racing in the sort of the domestic leagues, and just started to really sort of make a nudge into like the sort of the higher levels of competition. I just sort of got a little bit out of step on one corner of one race, and sort of fractured my back. So that put me out for a few months, and curtailed my season. I didn't actually get to finish that year, and came back actually stronger the following year. So it's sort of strange how that happens sometimes. Like the really big setbacks actually can then can somehow not even have too big of an effect, and you can come back and still do okay out of it. So that was one of those things. That particular one was a bad one, and it's still actually there reminding me each day. I still have little bits of back pains and stuff like that, but it's just one of those things, and it's just all part of the journey.
And how did that affect your mental, emotional and physical health, the whole holistic, looking at health, like in terms of that injury? And
health-wise or mental-wise or emotional-wise, if you're, I don't know that many other professional sports people, but kind of terms that I don't think they're, that worried about. You don't worry if you're emotionally fine or physically fine or mentally fine. You just worry about winning the contest that you're going to go in on that weekend or whatever it is. So you just that's the way it was for me anyway. I never really stopped to think about how the body was. It's just, could I actually physically ride a bike fast? And that was always mentally the goal, and then emotionally you're happy if you're winning races. So it's sort of one of those things where none of that sort of started to make any sense to me until after the sort of career ended, when some more of the injuries started to accumulate, and sort of the life takes a bit of a downward turn from there. But that early on, those sort of early kind of severe injuries, didn't affect me physically, mentally, or emotionally that much.
So, Adam, big journey then back to Australia, and now you're a professional personal trainer in Newcastle here in Australia. So you and Melanie are great friends. So thanks, Melanie, again for finding another great guest. But what was your journey like to get back to Australia and into the career of a personal trainer?
I don't really have any qualifications of any kind. Like I said before, I was a young kid and all I really thought about was racing motorbikes, and that was my main thing. I didn't try very hard at school, or I didn't sort of then do a trade or go to university or study anything further. I just wanted to ride bikes around really fast, and I didn't ever have a plan for something after that. And I'd always been interested in training, and that was one of the things that sort of was, part and parcel with competing at a higher level. You kind of focus then on your physical presentation and performance, as well as what I was doing on the bike. So I always knew a bit about training, and a friend of mine, or a couple of people had sort of said about what was I going to do, and mentioned that as an option. Didn't really know if that was a viable thing, and then came back and and then that's the way it happened. So I had a lot of, because as I've said, I had a lot of injuries, and part of that was rehabilitating those injuries after, because when you're young and athletic kid and young man, I guess everything kind of happens easily. And then after you've busted the body up and it doesn't work anymore, you got to figure out how to make it work. So then it makes you, I believe anyway, and if I can say so myself, a very good teacher of how to get a body, regardless of whether it was broken or not. If it doesn't work exactly the way that we want it to, it needs some coaching, and not a lot of people are probably aware of that, even for themselves, just the importance of that sort of stuff and correct movement. So that's how it happened. I went from being quite active in terms of training, and then went into showing other people how to do it myself.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's a big transition from international speedway star to being a PT in Newcastle. Like, how did you find that? Because that's all you'd known, and then you came back here and you would have been away for a while and connecting back with mates and that. But that's a big transition. How did you deal with that?
It's hard. I mean, because I was Speedway. Not a lot of people really understand Speedway unless you know about Speedway. It's a racing competition where there's not a huge amount of riders, but there's probably more competitions than there are riders. So, for instance, I raced in three national leagues, which were the Polish, British, and Swedish league. And then so we would be racing, the guys would be racing together on let's say a Monday night in England, and then we'd fly to Sweden on a Tuesday morning and then race there on Tuesday, fly back to England for a race meeting back in England on Wednesday, maybe Thursday, Friday, back over to Poland on a Saturday, and then we would do our Polish league match racing on Sunday, and then that's the week over, and then we've been on sort of 3 or 4 flights by that stage, 3 countries, and it's really kind of, I can't imagine another sport that's has anything like the travel
it's
demands.
Grueling. It's really grueling.
It's pretty insane, and it lasts for 7 to 8 months of the year, and then in answer to the question, coming back to then just waking up and showing people how to do some exercises after that was very different, a major change. And from going to, I don't know, maybe I sometimes hazard a guess that it might have been like 20 hours sleep, a week, without any exaggeration. It's unless you're seeing the schedule, you wouldn't believe that that's even a realistic thing to say, but other riders know that I'm telling the truth about that. To then, having plenty of time free. It was just really crazy transition, and I still don't know if I'm quite, settled back down yet, So, but it's it's been 8 years now, I think, since I've been back. So, trying to just fit back into, fit in with normal people again.
Great. Well, Adam, one of the big reasons we wanted to get you on the show was to have a chat about particularly people around our age group, Melanie and I around that sort of 40 to mid 40s vintage. And we wanted to have a bit of a chat about, what's some of the things that you would recommend for people that are in their 40s or in their late 30s? What sort of changes are going on with their bodies, and what should we be doing to keep sort of fit and strong and healthy body-wise at this age in this time of our lives?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think you've, especially if you're talking specifically about, mid 30s plus, you've probably got past the stage of being experimental with the sport that you think you're going to be successful at and all of that kind of stuff. You've probably passed that. You probably already, if you're going down the family road, probably already made the decision to do that, all that kind of stuff. You nearly, your life's not over, but it's on that sort of
it's different. Yeah,
it's taken that path, and it's sort of on the way that it's probably going to stay. So like I said, the sport's done. The injuries that you probably accumulated over years of sports, if you were a sporty person, all that stuff's happened. And then you kind of, whatever you've got, whenever you pick that time or age, that date, whenever that is from 35 on, it's what it is, but it's about to get worse and harder. So whatever it is now, and if you think that it'll probably get better by this time next year, if you don't do anything, it'll just, that sore shoulder or those, creaky knees or whatever that you've got are about to get better. You're in for a horrible shock that it's about to get a whole lot worse. And even if it's kind of painful and uncomfortable now, to get out and do the things that you feel like you ought to do, it's only going to be worse the longer you wait. And that's kind of the thing that I would like to say is that, just for anybody that I speak to about training, it's to just to get started. The waiting around and hoping that one day it'll become easier or easy, it's not coming. So get on with it, and then the rewards come from that.
Great. So how would you approach someone starting for the first time? Is it steady as it goes, or do we get into things straight away? What's the best approach?
Well, my personal belief is that if you're not doing strength training, then you're kind of wasting time running, cycling, swimming, climbing stairs, all of those things. If you're doing those activities, you're wasting your time that you could be doing actual strength training. And why do I choose strength training over anything else? Because I've had all those injuries, and I know that running, cycling, climbing upstairs, all that kind of nonsense just makes you more sore, or probably puts you further away from where you want to be, which is being able to move correctly. Like I said, from injuries, and what I've noticed is after recovering from a broken pelvis and the broken back that I spoke about, all shoulder injuries and elbow injuries, all the kind of stuff. I remember how I was when I was trying to recover those injuries, and it's exactly like the people that I'm training now who've just been inactive. It's exactly the same stuff, and running and cycling and stuff was only making it worse, and that's why I almost forbid people from doing those things. And so it's a little bit dogmatic from my point of view. There's obviously, you can find plenty of examples of people that who've got great stories about their morning jogs that they do or whatever. Well, that's fine for them. But if your hips are sore or your knees are sore or something like that, then strength training is going to be the way that I would sort of recommend that you go. So if it's where to start is join a gym and figure out how to move progressively more weight than what you started with, or to accumulate more strength than what you started. So if you can't then figure out how to do that, that's where people like myself and people who work in the industry can help out.
So what do you do about in the last couple of years? Obviously, we've had gym closures, gym back open, and a lot of people doing outdoor stuff. So if you don't have the gym, what would you suggest for people? Because that's not always accessible.
Yeah, it's very, 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 very tough. You can still replicate some of the strength movements with moderate amounts of sort of weight, even, and I had to adapt to a few of those things as well. But yeah, it's been really tough, and it depends which way you want to go with the conversation of whether or not that was a productive thing to close down gyms and things for health reasons and safety. Which
seems
is
ridiculous.
And it's also, and of course, diet's a big part of that. But it's incredible, like the levels of, I know myself having put on weight for the first time in a long time. Like there's just a lot of, I think people can have considered the last couple of years to be really detrimental to their physical health, and putting on a lot of weight. People were eating a lot and, comforting themselves over the last couple of years. So it feels like a lot of people are starting back at the beginning of that journey.
Yep.
And so if we're looking at things not being predictable, even for the foreseeable future, like where do you see that going in terms of getting people motivated to stay exercising, to stay fit and healthy, or to even get them back to where they probably were pre-COVID, where they felt like they had more control over those aspects?
Yeah, well, I guess the thing with that is that if you're limited and you can't go in, and as I've just said, I believe that's the way to go forward, is to go and join a gym. If all the gyms are shut, then you can't go and do that. Then the alternatives are much more productive to then go out and go swimming or walking or riding or that, then watch a Netflix series from one episode to the next or series to the next. So, but of course that's a way of doing it. But whether we're going to be faced with another situation like that, I don't know. But there are ways and means of doing that also with, even for instance, like just a set of rubber bands. You can still do some resistance training. So strength training is just producing force against a external load, which is then can be replicated with a set of rubber bands. So it doesn't need a huge amount of equipment and weights and stuff like that. It's not ideal to use rubber bands either. But it can be done. But like I said, hopefully we're not going to be experiencing any things like that in the sort of the near future, and we'll be able to keep attending our gyms.
What about even using your own body weight, Adam? Like things like push-ups or pull-ups or chin-ups and things like that. How effective are those?
Yeah, they're great. The trouble with the bodyweight exercises is that they're a lot harder than what you would think that they are. So just to go ahead and do a few pull-ups and push-ups, you'll realize you do maybe, if you're untrained, they're almost unachievable things. And then the correct technique of a squat and a lunge and stuff like that is pretty tricky to get right unless you've got somebody sort of watching you, because if you're then practicing those stronger movements, which are lower body movements with a correct technique, that's probably not making you stronger either. So the upper body movements like the pull up and the push up are really tough to do because they're just very hard things, and then the lower body ones are kind of easy, but they're very easy to do incorrectly. So
okay, right,
again, what I'm kind of getting at is it's not easy to go and just go ahead. So the message of just do something is a tricky one to just sort of just shout that at everybody and say, that's the way to go forward, because I think a lot of people think that will do, just to do something. I'm a big believer in from my own experience, from having injuries and then watching people who have not had injuries, had professional careers, and who've had all the same complaints and symptoms that I have over the years of having sore things from not moving them correctly. This is just what happens. It doesn't matter who we're talking to, whether you're an ex-motorcycle racer or a physician. You have the same complaints of sore backs, sore knees, sore hips, all those kind of things. Most of those kind of people that I'm talking about have had careers where they've been a bit active or done some running and all that kind of stuff, which is again not helped. So it sounds very confusing what I'm saying, or like how do you even go anything further, because anything that you've heard a lot of the time is that just some movement is good. Well, by comparison to doing nothing at all, yeah, that's correct. But will that actually make you overall stronger and move better? Possibly not really the way to get that done. And the real way to get that done is by actually the correct, strength movements and moving some weights.
So, Adam, we know you're not a dietitian, but obviously diet plays a big role in maintaining physical health. So tell us about your own diet and what you suggest to listeners would be a way to balance out physical exercise and have knowledge of how diet fits in with exercise.
Yeah, being not a dietitian myself, but I've always been fairly aware of what makes you gain weight anyway, which is for the most part people's problem. If you've got, intolerances and stuff like that, then that's when you need to go and see a dietitian. But if your problem with food is the relationship that you just have too much of it because you're gaining weight, that's a pretty easy one to solve, is just to be a bit more aware of what's in the foods that you're actually putting in your mouth. So, and if you've gained any weight over the recent periods, or you've gained weight since you were 18 or whatever the case may be, that probably just means that there's an excess of calories that you were taking that you could avoid having if you can be a little bit more careful of what your choices are. And that's really the key to it, I think, is that to know that some foods out there just stack on the calories very fast and mean the weight stacks on very fast. I've been experimenting with a lot of different diets and things myself, and always have sort of varying degrees of success with weight and weight gaining and trying to gain muscle and strength, and all that kind of stuff comes into it. But generally, for what most people need to know to maintain a healthy weight, it's just the amount of food that they're sort of taking in. Really, it's quite a simple thing, but it's just very hard to moderate yourself, because cravings start and it's very hard to say no.
So what you're saying, Adam, is that, of course, there's issues around what carbohydrates and sugar and stuff like that, but you're saying it's even more simple than that. It's simply just the physical amount of calories that you're taking in.
If you're healthy, it's for long-term health. There's obviously a lot more comes into it than that. But to get you started on the right track of whether or not you're going to gain weight or lose weight, the main thing that you would need to focus is it a calorie surplus or a calorie deficit that you're in. If you're in a surplus, then you will gain weight, doesn't matter who you are. And if you're in a deficit, you will lose weight, doesn't matter who you are. It's a fairly straightforward thing. It's backed up by plenty of knowledgeable people, far more knowledgeable people than me, but it's very hard to prove it in experiments that you've done yourself or people that because they haven't actually done it. Because yourself, if you're then being really, really honest with yourself, whether or not you've snuck one of those sandwiches in, or an extra burger or whatever it was, it's very, very hard to do that. And if everybody has tried a diet before, they know how hard they are to stick to. That's why then diets that have a prescribed amount of things that you're supposed to eat, like whichever the diet might be, they're very, very hard to stick to. That's why it's good to try and eat foods that aren't as calorie sort of rich, and then and it's quite often the tasty ones that are
of course
that are like
course.
that. The combinations of fat and sugar are in most of the faster foods that we want, and the ease and the cost of those things make it just almost forcing people to gain weight, because it's easy, it's cheap, it tastes great. And what else could you what more could you want, really, apart from not gaining weight? But the trouble is the stuff that will stop you from or gaining weight, or actually encourage you to lose weight, might not be very tasty, might not be as tasty, and there's always these people out there trying to sell you diets and stuff, and tell you that theirs is the most tasty one, and you don't have to eat bland food to lose weight. They're just trying to sell you something, because anybody who's tried their things then realize that those kind of foods aren't that great either. So it is possible. You just have to then sort of be in the correct mindset, I think, is the main thing, is just to sort of see, look at what you're doing, and then just sort of say, right, well, by this time next year, not this time, I've got to wedding to go to in 6 weeks time or nonsense like that. It's like we're talking long term, and even 1 year ahead is very short term as well. So you can't see those kind of huge results that most people expect, because they did without bread for a few days, and they feel like I should be in those small jeans or whatever, just after a few days. It could be a year at least before you're seeing like the actual results, which mean that they're long term and that are there to stay. And again, it's not sexy, it's not what you'll get sold by people who are selling
Adam,
stuff.
it's such a shame. So what you're saying is tomorrow, when I'm at work and I've been busy all day, if I only have one less pie a week, it's not going to make much of a difference, is it?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, like I said, it's if you can't hurry these results, you can't hurry getting stronger, you can't hurry weight loss or all those kind of things. It's really tricky stuff, and what's so harmful is the like, I'm making things sound complicated, I guess, because they are. When you listen to convoluted sort of stories and stuff like that you hear on the stories that I'm telling sound a little convoluted, but the people on the internet that are advertising stuff, they make it sound so simple, and then you try that thing and then it turns out that it doesn't work, because it's not simple and it's not fast, and it's not one thing, it's definitely not as easy. But that's one thing that I kind of have always enjoyed, for some weird reason. I don't know why that is, but just the grind of it, the struggle of that.
Okay. Tell us, why is that? Why do you enjoy the struggle?
I don't know. It's one of the only things that I kind of work hard at, though. And so I'm not very financially successful, or I had my racing career. It had its time and wasn't as successful in that as I wanted to be either. But with this lifestyle, I actually sort of think of the training lifestyle as and training people is just something that affords me to be in the gym longer myself, to be able to do more workouts myself. I just enjoy it. And so if that's something that you enjoy, then it makes it very, very easy to do. If you love gardening, you've probably got a nice front garden and back garden and stuff like that. My garden looks like shit because I hate it. So it's one of those things. If I wanted a nice garden, I would have to either get somebody to come and fix my garden up, or I would have to learn how to spend the time 4 hours a Sunday or whatever it is in the garden. And so it's just one of those things, and you got to look at why something works. If you're successful in one area, then you've got to then try to apply that to health and fitness. But the thing that I think about health and fitness is that you can say gardening, or you can say whichever hobby you might have, but I think that the health and fitness one is the only relevant, and it's certainly for me the most important one, because it's you can't go gardening, or you can't do other stuff unless your body's moving as you want it to. If you're healthy enough to wake up and spring out of bed in the morning, well, then you can go and tackle any hobby that you want to do. But unless that body's moving correctly, you don't get to live your life.
So Adam, what I was asking is, did you think that in your experience, your clients experienced that as well? They experienced that sense of achievement from struggle? Do you think that's part of the attraction of attending a gym and attending training sessions? Do you think they get the same sort of satisfaction like that?
I guess I try to instill in them that the stuff that I've been saying before, that this isn't an easy thing. You're not seeing me to get fast results. Nothing's going to be much different in even a year's time. They don't get the attractive sell of hey, I can have you looking great within 4 weeks, which is what most people will try and tell their prospective clients that they can do. It's sexy, it's attractive, it's all those kind of things that makes people then go ahead and try it, and then they realize that after 4 weeks that nothing's happened. And if they try to train a little bit too hard in that time and get really keen, they're probably just really sore and get injured. The people that I work with, I let them know that this is not a short-term thing. It's like for the rest of your life. There's not any way around that. There's just no way. Even if you take a couple of weeks off, a few of My clients took some time off over Christmas and they came back and everything's hard, even after a couple of weeks. So it's not like you've fixed up, things so you can just go ahead and, holiday for the rest of your life and take it easy. It's a week by week thing. And with that being the truth, there's no way around that. And if anybody was to suggest to you that it's anything other than that, they're telling fibs. That's where you really need to somehow find some enjoyment in it, because it is for the rest of your life. It's for a couple of hours minimum per week for the rest of your life. So you're going to have to try and make it enjoyable. And a great way to make it enjoyable is not to make it too hard. A lot of people think that they better get in the gym and like thrash themselves. That's not what getting stronger means. So where we just choose a set of activities, try to do them well, and then try to do them fractionally better next week than we did today, and that's really all there is to getting stronger. Because if that's the case, if it's slightly better than it is, slightly better next week than it is this week, then that must mean that we've just got stronger than we were. So that's really all there is to it, and it takes a lot of the confusion out of like exercise selections and how long you're meant to be doing it for and all this kind of stuff. It's just, we've just got to do it a little bit better than what we did last time. And that's never really all that hard to do. It's just hard to actually get there. That's the main thing for most people, is let's say the motivation or the commitment to just turn up. And especially if you've got somebody helping you do it, then that's some of that motivation and confusion comes out of it. But of course, not everybody can do that. So just then setting a task, and there's good information online to look up how to sort of structure a training program. But it's got to be consistent, and like I said, absolute bare minimum, a couple of weeks, for the rest of your life. But and again, that's not very exciting news to hear, because it sort of sounds like a bit of a life sentence. But if you kind of enjoy that journey, then it's kind of a cool thing to be sentenced to, because it's like you just get to do it, you have to do it. So you kind of look forward to it and enjoy it.
So you've got long-term clients, but when you first started, how did you manage expectations then? Like, how did you kind of educate your clients into the way you train and to change that mindset and of your approach to exercise? Because I would imagine there'd be a lot of people turning up going, I want to look good in 4 weeks, or a lot of people go to a PT for that.
Yeah, I'd already been training for a long time and been working out pretty hard. I think I can say that. And I never really noticed that much difference than in physically, in terms of, because I was never overweight and had to trim down, but I didn't grow like huge muscles and didn't have like the physique that looked like it was in a action movie. It didn't look like Schwarzenegger or something like that, because I was already aware that those kind of things didn't come, first of all, naturally, and also easily. They weren't because they went and joined a gym and then got that within a few weeks. So even my experience of when I first started as a trainer, I'd been training myself for 20 years, or 15 years, I suppose, prior to that. So I knew a lot about how the process worked. So probably wasn't as confident in explaining that to people. And if they were saying, oh yeah, my friend got some fast results, and I wasn't quite confident enough to say, well, no, they didn't, or that kind of thing. But now I am sort of much more confident in that. But yeah, I guess, just when you're working with people, you're seeing, let them know that they've done well. And then if they've done well that day, that they might be able to replicate something a little bit better than that next week. And then they can see themselves that this isn't a fast thing to do something that's really high performing. And they're already doing, let's say, for instance, a 30 kilo squat, and then they see somebody else in the gym doing a 150 kilo squat. They know that the increments to get to 150 are very minute and very gradual. That means that person doing 150 has probably been there for 7 or 9 years
and
already.
May involve some steroids.
Well, that too, but that's sort of that's something that's out there. We don't need to even worry about that. I've never really worried about, whether people are doing that sort of stuff. It's sort of it's a fun topic if you get into the gym, but it's one of those things where it is out there, but you don't really need it to be able to move well and enjoy the gym experience.
Well, I just think that it's a motivation in itself for clients to come along, and that to have the struggle. I mean, there must be a great reward and a great sense of self-satisfaction when they're seeing those results, over time. I think that would be part of the attraction, is to go through the struggle and to achieve.
Yeah, it's sometimes what it is, if you're patient enough to see the journey through. But like I said, that thing that you might be working on to get better at. Let's say, for instance, we talked about the pull up before. Some people that I've been working with, and it's not through any lack of effort or anything like that, it may take a couple of years to actually get their first actual pull up. And that's no disgrace to them, because it's bloody hard things to do unless you've been doing it since a young kid. And that's why it's very important. We've been talking about the sort of, let's say, more mature, adult 35 plus kind of people, how to get started. It's not too late, but you have left it quite late if you've left it till 35 to get active, because it's just an uphill sort of battle from there. If you started as a 6-year-old and doing gymnastics or rugby league, you're probably pretty strong and athletic right through your life. But starting to get active as a 35 plus year old is quite a different thing. So when you talk about the results, they're small and they're gradual. And that's the thing that I like to make sure everybody knows, especially if they're going to start and train with me, is not to expect bikini bodies and singlets and stuff like that within the first couple of weeks, unless they're already confident enough to be wearing that stuff. It's not something that'll change overnight. And that's, I think, the thing that for me is fun to work with, and just to let them know how actually things are, not how they would wish they were. Would be lovely if it was fast and if all that kind of stuff, but it's not, and that's just how it works. And if you think about it, it's not how you go and make a lot of money. You don't get an education overnight. You don't get any of these things without serious amounts of hard work, and fitness and health is one of those things. Refining your eating habits and the stuff like that, it's all the process. You're not just going to go, I'll just stop doing that and it'll work by tomorrow. It's a process that takes years to sort of master.
So, Adam, what's your 3 top tips for people starting the year off? What 3 things do you think are the most important thing to focus on for people starting or continuing with their fitness?
To the question of something that I did myself, I'm already somebody who trains, but when I turned 40, which is almost 5 years ago, I set a little task of things to do each birthday that comes around. It's just a little workout, or quite a large workout actually, but that comes around once a year. As I get older, I do the same workout and then try to replicate that same thing better each year that goes by. So I sort of train for that and towards it, and each year so far it's got a little bit better. So that's something that I've done. But let's say, for instance, if you started this year and can't quite figure out what to do, just pick a thing, like say how many, let's say, if you can already do push-ups, how many of those can you do? If you can find a fairly steep hill that you're going to be living near for the next few years, walk up it, see how long that takes, or even run up it, or those kind of things. Stuff like that requires a bit of strength and a fair bit of effort to do. It's not meant to be easy. It's something that's fairly challenging for you to do now. Like I said, it could be anything that's challenging for you to do now, and I mean really quite tough, and make it your goal to do it much better next year. We're talking 1 year, and that's a 1 year of work to do something better than what you can do now. But that for me is a great way to see some sort of change, is that you've got to take where you are now and then look at improving that within, and what will seem to most people, it sounds like forever when you say a year, because again, it's not what the fitness industry promises you when you hear about, training results, kind of intervals. It sounds like that's, you hear about 12-week challenge and stuff like that. That's kind of like long-term actually nowadays. They have 4-week challenges and stuff like that, which is just completely ridiculous. This is a 1-year challenge for you. And if you've got the ability to set out a bit of a task that you can do, it could be fitness or strength related, whatever that may be, whatever it is. The aim is to do it better next year. If you can do it better again the following year, and then the following year after that, and then the following year after that, let's say you do it for the next 20 years and you're already, 47, you'll be 67 and still doing what you can do now, but better than what you can today. If you stick to that program, that's 20 years worth of focusing on movements and stuff. But if you've aged 20 years and actually got better at moving, then you're unlike most people who age 20 years, because that's just not what happens. Most people are quite comfortable with the fact that they're going to get worse and old. And if you are happy with that, then that's fine. But if you feel like there's something wrong with that scenario, don't let it happen.
Yeah, Adam, I think that's great advice, because just from my own personal experience, I mean, I spent quite a fair amount of time, in a previous career where I was quite sedentary, a lot of office work, a lot of driving work, a lot of just times in meetings and conference rooms and stuff like that. And now I have a very physical job that's very physically active. I don't work out as such, because I when people say to me, "Oh, do you work out?" I say, "Oh, I work outside all day." But my job is a lot of strength work. It's physically demanding, and I actually feel as though that I'm much fitter and much stronger than what I was in my 20s, to be honest. And that's just because of my body's moving all the time. I used to have quite a lot of back issues and quite a lot of knee problems from. I was very big into sports in my teens and 20s, but I don't have those issues now, because I'm simply moving and using my body and lifting heavy things all day and using my strength all day. So there's a real strong message there, I think, for people that are growing older to get stronger will help them.
Yeah, no, that's great. If you've noticed that kind of thing, and anybody else who goes from a sedentary lifestyle to a active lifestyle, regardless of what it is, will see improvements. The other thing that I'm a little bit sort of cautious of just saying, just do something that's active and tough, like working manually or doing manual work, is that, let's say, for instance, probably some of the strongest human beings I can think of would be bricklayers or builders or, carpet layers and stuff like that. They could do far more than I could do in their respective kind of professions. I'd probably last, 5 minutes before they'd throw me off the building site or whatever. But they probably can't move through the movement patterns that you would have selected. So, and they're the ones that are going to stop the hips from complaining or the back from complaining and stuff like that. So what you have to be very careful of with just finding a favored movement selection, like say, for instance, I don't know what your job is, but let's say, for instance, you're moving furniture or whatever it is, you'll find a way to do that comfortably. So you'll get very, very, very bullshit strong at doing that. But if there's a slight variety of that, it probably hurts the knee, or it probably hurts the back, or it probably hurts those. That's where it's important to come out of, even if we're talking about exercise, the examples that I gave before, running, walking, cycling, swimming, they're all very short range movements, carrying heavy things in your manual labor job, short range movements. What we try to do, what I would like to recommend people to do is, full range movement. So that's a full range squat or a full range, press overhead or these kind of things. So not just shortening the things up, because that's what the body really wants to sort of feel kind of nice and healthy, is to actually move through its full range. And that's where the stiff sort of joints and things come from, is not exercising their full, full range of movement. So you can feel good short term by starting to become more active and stronger and stuff like that. That'll feel better than being weak, but it won't possibly feel as good as being strong and mobile mobilize.
okay,
What I mean
great.
by that is being able to squat right down deep and, push something up over your head and carry it around and stuff like that.
Yeah, and probably, I mean, I'm 45 now, so if I want to keep doing what I'm doing, I mean, I've got a small garden maintenance sort of landscaping business.
Yep.
So if I want to keep doing that, then I should probably start doing more training. That would be a good recommendation.
Yep. Well, the strength you will be getting from moving this stuff around that you need to move, but then you could probably get away with, or not get away with, it would be beneficial for you to do calisthenics training, which is essentially just means body weight training. If you're able to do those kind of things, that'll keep you mobilized. Mobility means the ability to move through a range of movement. It's not anything that connected to flexibility, which is a lot of people think that, oh yeah, my hamstrings are a bit tight, or those kind of things, that they need to work on that before they need to do their squats and those things, when actually the mobility stuff comes first, and that will actually help along the flexibility too. And a flexible, mobile body will feel very good with some physical strength as well, possibly for the rest of your life. And you won't be sort of one of those aged people who then starts to go, yeah, I would have done that on the weekend with the kids or whatever your story might be, because of, some being tired and sore and stuff like that. You should just be able to live your life until, I don't know when, until you can't.
Mel, how can we wrap things up? Let's talk about one other thing that I wanted to ask you about, Adam, especially after this, time of year, gone through Christmas and New Year's. How does it, the indulgence of party food and alcohol over that festive season, how much of an impact does that have on people's health and fitness? And what's your advice around, balance, basically?
Balance, yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd like to enjoy as much things that everybody else does. The thing is, though, with it is not to beat yourself up over Christmas. Is that Christmas is just a collection of days, and they accumulate up. But when we're talking about a year challenge, let's say. Well, then that sort of gets softened down into the amount of days that there are in a year. So let's say, for instance, if you wanted to try and lose weight in December, it's probably not a good time to lose weight. So when you get on the scales in January and you think, oh, yeah, I'm fat now, because you are, but it doesn't matter about January because we've got still until, next December. And if you do put on a couple more kilos next December, well, hopefully, if it's weight loss that you're talking about, the 7 that you've kind of like gradually dropped down between now and the end of December, then another 2 on will mean that you're 5 less than what you are now. So this is always a way to think of going ahead forward. Don't beat yourself up, if you like, drinking, if you like cake, if you like stuff like that, just keep enjoying it, but try not to do it every day. If you find a way of regulating that, so it's a weekend thing. So even if you do, or then it can be an every other weekend thing. So let's say, for instance, you're doing 2 days of, indulging a week, or it could be 5, it could be 7, who knows what that case may be. But if it's, let's say, for instance, 2, it's quite often the case. Well, if you then made that 1 day, then you've already halved it. So, and if that's relying on you being honest with yourself and having a sort of a good lifestyle on the 5 other days. It's about
not
being
like all or nothing, is it? Like, I think people think, especially over Christmas, I've blown it for a few days, I may as well blow it for the next couple of weeks. But really, like, if you do have 2 or 3 big days, you really could go a couple of days with very low food. I mean, we're actually about to do a brain snapshot on my 3-day fast that I tried, and it really helped me after just eating and drinking over Christmas. I felt so much better. But yeah, it's that all or nothing mentality that I guess a lot of people struggle with. And then you don't have to go, just because you've had a few days over Christmas doesn't mean then you have to go 2 or 3 weeks over Christmas and finish off the ham, like it is.
You get to, if you need to indulge in the things that you need to indulge in, then go ahead. I mean, it's one of those things at which you just can't beat yourself up for, because I think that's the trouble, is that you sort of think, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and then it makes you feel worse. So just go, no, I enjoyed that, and own it, and then go work, for the for the next, little, I suppose you can call them treats. I don't really like to think of it like that, but if you need to think of it like treats, it's just part of life. If you enjoy that stuff, and you want to have a life that you can claim to enjoy, that's probably going to need to be part of it. Just try not to make it a habit. And like I said, don't beat yourself up because it's a long-term thing. If you're sad and depressed about things that have happened in the past, then you'll carry that into the future. If you go, I really enjoyed my Christmas time, and I'm working hard towards bettering things for this time next year by performing a task that was that we talked about before, setting out in front of you. I don't see anything wrong with having a Christmas time, and then when birthdays come around and all that kind of stuff. It's just that, of course, when you, the biggest trouble is nothing to do with actually Christmas anyway. It's it's the convenient Friday night stop off at KFC, or that's generally the worst thing, because it's not the 4 days, 5 days, or whatever over Christmas, because that's 4 or 5 days. It's the 50 Fridays in a year that you stop at KFC.
Lucky KFC's run out of chicken.
But that's really good. It's really good advice what you said before, though. So, I mean, if you say, like, if you make it really simple and you say, well, if we're having takeaway 2 nights a week, we just cut it down to 1 night a week and you've halved it. That's a really simple way of looking at it.
Yeah. It's an easy way. I mean, it's not foolproof, that one, but so long as nothing changes on the other days, then you have actually halved one of those days. Now, there's much more to learn, but you've got to have to start somewhere, and that's maybe a way to start it. And if that's doable, Mel mentioned fasting before. That's something that I've been experimenting with a little bit lately, and feeling some amazing results from that. But sometimes that's a little bit too much to suggest to somebody to go and just say, you're not going to eat for 2 days. I mean, that's just too much to do. It's also too much to say, hey, here's the workout program that I do. You've got to then work out where you're at, and starting something like that, just replacing one of the if it's a biscuit that you have with morning coffee, then have an apple with morning coffee. Just see how that feels, or whatever the case may be. Now, that's not a huge saving in calories that we were talking about before, but it's a change of habit, and it's a way of then introducing new things. Because remember, it's not about getting into a pair of jeans next Sunday. It's about, being healthier, in 30 years' time. So it doesn't matter too much about whether or not it's hard this week, because it is. That's the point that we were trying to make earlier on, is that it is hard. You're not going to find a way that's easy, because that would be ridiculous to think that you have found a way that's easy and nobody else can. We've just, other people have adapted to it over time, then become, comfortable enough with it and enjoy it enough to be able to then make it their lifestyle. But there's no easy fix or easy start. This is not the, hey, what you should do, and this will be, this will work for you immediately. It'll be a process that takes, a long time. But what you want to make sure is that there's a noticeable step forward monthly or weekly or whatever it is, and not a huge jump forward, because that's never going to happen. And if it is going to be a huge jump forward in terms of, strength or fitness or weight loss, then it's about to be a huge jump back. So it's small steps, manageable steps that you can maintain, like I said, for the rest of your life. And that's the way to be healthy.
Well, Adam, that's a really great advice. I think that's a really great way to wrap up this episode. I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks.
We'd love to check in with you down the track. Mm-hmm. Maybe we could, if you've been experimenting with fasting, maybe you could give us another episode down the track and go through what that process was and some advice for people that are trying that out. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, no worries. I can always do that.
Thanks, Adam. It's been a real pleasure meeting you. Mel, great to catch up. Happy New Year.
Great to catch up. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to all of our listeners, and for all of those of you guys who may have overindulged a little bit over the Christmas period. I think you got a lot of good information there. So get started. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.